Welcome to Worship Conversations from Audacious Worship. I'm Matt Hill, and this week I'm joined by a very, very good friend of mine, Mr. Paul Nelson, who's the worship pastor from St. Peter's in Brighton. Hey, welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. So good.
Amazing that you could join us. I feel like I will say the word amazing more because I know that that's what my friends in the HTB world do, and that's what you do.
Yeah. That's what I do. Well, Matt, I haven't always spoken like this. I haven't always been this southern because I was born in Manchester.
No way.
Yeah, I was born in Manchester, born and raised I was born in Manchester. Well, there's probably a few hospitals in Manchester, but I was born in Hope Hospital, is it?
Hope Hospital, yes.
I was born there.
Oh, that's ridiculous. My son was born in Hope Hospital.
No way. There you go. See, I kept this as a little surprise for you, Matt, just for the genuine reaction. But and then I lived in Bury for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So Bury. So I used to have a proper Mancunian Bury accent. So, but now then we moved down south, and then I'm sorry, I've gone all amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm with you in spirit. I support Man United for all good reasons.
Excellent.
Yeah, so
excellent.
There you go.
Well,
no, great
that's thrown me because I've known you for a number of years now, and I never knew that, and that sort of shocked me genuinely.
I'm sorry, I've never told you that, Matt.
Oh well, that's amazing. So you're literally from Hope Hospital in Manchester. That's just down the road from where I am. Brilliant.
So good.
So Paul, I've been asking basically every worship leader, songwriter that's been on the show, because it's sort of a thing now. Basically, just to give us a little bit of background, so the first question generally is, what sort of started you off? Can you remember a point in your life when you just suddenly sort of fell in love with music, or maybe it wasn't music, maybe it was when you first heard the call of God, but that point in your life where you were like, this is what I want to do? Yeah,
so good. Well, I mean, ever since I was a baby, I've been involved in the church. So I've come to think of it now as not a boring testimony at all. I used to sort of think, when I tell my testimony, I think, I don't know if it's a bit sort of just, mum and dad loved the Lord from day one of my life, and sort of just grew up in that context, really loving church community in Bury, and beyond, and just sort of was immersed in a youth group that just I loved. And so, but actually come to think of it now and think it's just the grace of God in my life, just so grateful for that testimony. And that's sort of the testimony I want for my own children. I'm sure for you as well. I've never known a time where I haven't known His presence and known His love in my life. Really, So it's obviously I've been through stuff, but in terms of like my Christian faith, I can't really pinpoint like kind of a moment where I said I'm going to become a Christian. I had an amazing baptism moment and just invited God into my life, but in a series of you sort of constant surrender, really, always. I feel like I'm still in that, like just coming back to Him, saying, Lord. But in terms of music and worship, and I feel like I really grew up around that, so I was just so immersed in it, and images of, I don't know, me with a plastic guitar at the front of church, and sort of. My dad led worship, so I think I sort of always known it, but for sure, like as a teenager, there was moments that I can really pinpoint, different conferences, or I was lucky enough to grow up in that Soul Survivor kind of that movement, and I just loved that every summer. And just, I think just thinking, Lord, it was probably more of a yes to God than anything else. It wasn't necessarily a music focused thing. It was just want to say yes to God. And music, as I say, and worship has always been there. But just I was in a few little bands, through my teenage years, experimenting with music, songwriting, and loved all that. But eventually realised, I think it's really want to concentrate on music for the Lord. I love that. There's that verse in 2 Chronicles that talks about that. Oh, I don't know, 1 or 2 Chronicles. Don't quote me on that. It's in Chronicles somewhere. But about King David setting apart like these Levites for the ministry in the temple of the Lord. Yeah. There's this beautiful phrase where he says they were set apart for music to the Lord. And it's not just music. It's like it's got a very specific direction and emphasis. And so I suppose music to the Lord has always been my particular sort of emphasis. And so that's where I've really invested from teenage years right the way through to now, I suppose, and growing a team around that and just wanting others to experience that and grow in music to the Lord. So, so that's a bit of a ramble, but
I will have probably first met you, I think, in the Worship Central sort of network and meetings. But as I understand it, didn't you do the Worship Central, you were like an intern or something like that, or you were on the course? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was, as I say, really lucky enough to, as a teenager, kind of grow up leading worship. Actually ended up Archie Coates, who is now the lead. Well, he is the leader of St. Peter's Brighton, my boss. He was the curate. So in Church of England speak, it's kind of the assistant type pastor or whatever in our church where I grew up. So I started leading worship under Archie, and then he moved off to HTB. So actually, I then went to uni and was working out post-uni what to do with life, and actually one day just went to HTB in kind of exploration around what to do next. I had lost touch with Archie and Sam, to be honest, and my wife Sarah and I grew up together, and Archie knew us as kids, but we just thought we were at uni in Nottingham, so kind of London felt like a big move, but we thought, I think it's London that we should move to. And we were engaged, and so we were kind of working out life, I suppose. We strolled into HTB, and Archie was the first person we saw. We bumped into him, and which isn't that surprising. He's the vicar there, but actually by the end of that service, I was doing an internship pretty much at HTB. So it kind of all the dots began to join up. Sometimes there are moments in life, aren't there, where God just sort of, there's an acceleration of that, and you only look back and think, oh wow, it's all kind of, as I say, the thread for us goes right back through into our teenage life. So Archie Coates was really the thread for me into HTB, but ended up doing an internship off the back of university at Holy Trinity Brompton, and that was when Worship Central had just started. So actually I say lucky enough because I was lucky enough to do the internship, sneak into the internship just before the kind of Worship Central internship started. I say lucky enough because one of the things I'm so grateful to God for is that I got this kind of very close view on being a worship pastor, because it was just me and a couple of other interns, and we were just thrown into the office. It wasn't such a formalised programme that particular year. It then kind of started so Tim Hughes was the worship pastor of HTB at the time. And so it was great just to sort of watch everything that Tim did, watch the way he ran meetings, made decisions, had pastoral conversations. I just kind of, I didn't know why I was quite hungry for it all. I was just sort of, took it all in, took notes, took mental notes, and so it was it was so grateful for that year with Tim particularly. And so, did that, and then stayed on staff at HTB after that year, actually with a part-time role, half with Archie and then half with the sort of worship department. But and the stuff with Archie was very administrative, which set me up well for being a worship pastor. Don't you find that, Matt? Like 80% of being a worship pastor is admin. Anyway, but that was a slight sort of holding role, because then probably just toward the end of my internship, Archie and Sam asked if we'd go to Brighton. So I was kind of, sort of, it was a big thing though at that point, because Brighton was the first church plant outside of London that HTB had done. And Archie and Sam was so central at HTB. Me and Sarah had to keep it a secret for about a year that we were going, because it was big news when that was announced. But so again, if I look back, I think that's such a privilege that we had that experience. And so that was just over 10 years ago now that we moved to Brighton, September 2009. And then, that's been, I'm so sorry, I even lost the start of your question, but the internship, I think it was.
Internship, that's
so definitely route back to Tim Hughes and Al Gordon were, and they teased me a lot. My very first week there, they said, I was so hungry, I was like absorbing everything. They said, they took me to one side in a corridor and said, okay, so Paul, one thing is we do a lot of prison ministry and we'd like you to go and lead worship in prison. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm up, I'll do whatever, I'll serve wherever, I'll do it. They said, but the only catch is you have to stay in the prison. It's like a week-long thing, and they'll give you a cell. It'll be quite nice, but I was like, yeah, I'm up for it. I'll do whatever. They were like, you numpty. So anyway, I would get the rip taken out of me a lot. But it was good time.
Oh, very good. Only you, Paul, would actually be up for doing that. And with an honest and gracious spirit about, yes, of course.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. No, so they took advantage of my innocence, but no, it was good. It was definitely amazing learning experience, and
that's incredible. So you recently had the 10-year anniversary of the St. Peter's plant, and I was there, which is amazing.
You were there,
and. It must be pretty amazing. The story of St. Peter's, I guess a lot of people will have heard it anyway, but it's pretty incredible, isn't it? And I think what's, I guess more monumental than restoring this amazing cathedral in the centre of the city, which obviously is a landmark building, and the city can see what you guys are doing because it's so obvious. But obviously, as well as filling it with people and people being added to your number weekly, you're also planting other churches straight away. And it seems to me to be that's what I think is most incredible about the HTB movement is this sort of passion for church planting. And maybe it seems to others of us that it's like, whoa, already they're planting other churches. But how many church plants have you now sent out?
Yeah, well, I mean, Archie and Sam, they're amazing visionary leaders, and church planting is a big part of their call, I think. So, I'm like you. I'm sort of like, oh, are we doing another one? Crazy, no, but it comes a bit from that generous spirit, I think, just wanting to give away the whole time. I'm trying to track back. We've certainly done two local ones, so we now operate on kind of 3 across the city. We call it our sort of St. Peter's family of churches, which is amazing. And then there's been a few over the years now. One in Hastings, one in Portsmouth. One's about to go out to Bognor Regis. To Crawley. So all quite local to our area. So I think there's about 4 that have gone beyond our city, and then 2 within the city. So. And I think the scheme is, or the hope is, over the next little while, we plant quite a few locally, just to sort of, I suppose it's that belief that if there's a church, like a walk away from someone, they're probably more likely to engage with it. Right. I suppose we've got that, I think it probably is an opportunity within the HTB network, because you've got that thing of that. So often that parish church thing is like that. It's the church people can see out of their window. It's like, oh yeah, go to St. Bartholomew's or whatever and turn left, but like, so I think if you can create these really thriving communities and worshipping lights in the middle of these even suburbs and estates, and real chance of reaching people with the gospel, I think. So, going to Christmas services, so I think that's a little bit of our vision in Brighton over the next 5 years, to plant sort of one a year locally, and just see. Yeah. So, but I can't say I'm a very big part of it. I just Archie and Sam, amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And I had another question there, which I have subsequently forgotten. Oh yeah, that's it. They can edit that bit out. So, as well as the 10-year anniversary, the reason I was there was because you were also recording a Bright City record. And so maybe some people have not heard of St. Peter's, but they have heard of Bright City, because you guys have been creating amazing music for a number of years now. Tell me a little bit, very just in a nutshell, what is the vision and the idea, and where did Bright City come from?
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. So Bright City is the worship movement of St. Peter's Brighton. So very much, heart and soul with the church. So it's obviously has a slightly different name, but it's a play on. It's a few things actually. The name, it's a play on the fact that Brighton, and we want to see, the vision is to see this city become bright with Jesus' name and glory, and but also taken from Matthew 5, where Jesus talks about, when you put your lamp, you take your light and you put it on a stand, that you become a city on a hill that can't be hidden. And I suppose the idea is St. Peter's in the middle of the city, like you mentioned, that's the sort of cathedral in the middle of the city. It's right in the valley of Brighton, running down to the sea. There's this valley, and St. Peter's sits right in the middle of that. And so it was this idea that when you get worship right and you exalt Jesus' name, I suppose, in the middle of you become a city within a city. So you become a worshipping community, becomes a city on a hill that can't be hidden. Yeah. And so the idea that I suppose worship just sets us alight, and to the extent that will be noticed, not because for us, but because Jesus will be noticed. So I suppose that's the vision of Bright City. We definitely believe worship and creativity prepares the way of the Lord. It's like praise in the Bible always prepares the way of the Lord. The shout of praise goes up in Joshua 6, and then the walls come down. Sure. 2 Chronicles 20, the worshippers go out of the head of the army, and then the breakthrough happens. So I suppose that's always been we've held to that from day one, really, of our journey in Brighton. That actually from 2 Chronicles 20, that King Jehoshaphat prayer, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you.
Yeah.
Totally. We've always believed, like, well, I don't, Brighton's a hard city in so many ways. Hard in the sense that there's some pretty real social need, some it's people have described it as a hard nut. It's quite it's a beautiful city, and God loves the city, but there's some hard things. And so I think when we first arrived at St. Peter's, we were pretty overwhelmed by the opportunity, but also the challenge, of how are we going to spread the gospel in this city? And so worship's always been that. It's like, well, we do know to worship, so let's just start there, and then we'll keep going. So the very first moment the team arrived in the building and looked around this crazy building that, like you say, is falling down, basically getting there now. But we thought, well, let's just get the guitar, let's just worship. That's what we do know to do. And then the breakthrough began to happen. And we've seen over the last 10 years, as we've stuck with it, as we've kept our eyes on God, I hope and think we have, we've seen more and more breakthrough. So this 10-year anniversary moment felt like, in some ways, we talked about it like, this is going to be another prophetic moment for us for the next decade. So we talked about to our congregation, like the shout of praise for the next 10 years in our city. You know, that's what we sort of believed it was that night. That praise just kind of opens up a move of God. We have no idea what that will be exactly, what that looks like, but we're believing that his kingdom's coming in our city. Revival's on its way. That's a big theme of this project coming up. But we believe praise and worship is such a massive part of that. It's like when the people of God are shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David as Jesus is walking into the city, or not even walking, he's coming in on a donkey, and they're laying down the palm branches and they're shouting, Hosanna, Jesus saves. You know, it's this crazy, loud, expressive moment. And it says that the whole city was stirred and asked, who is this? And the crowd responded, this is Jesus. You know, so that's what we feel like worship does. It just sort of creates a stir and prepares the way for him to then come in and for people to begin to ask, well, who's this? And we can just respond, this is Jesus. You know, so Matt, I'm not sure that was exactly your question, but
that's great.
The vision for this particular night was to get together and lift up a shout of praise, to thank God for the last 10 years, and then kind of look forward and lift up a shout of praise for the next 10.
Yeah.
And your role was essential in the whole thing, because you didn't just press record. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm sure you did more than that, but you were the man sorting us all out and making sure everything got captured. So it's very special for me as the worship pastor after 10 years, because to see the church rammed full of people, but lifting up Jesus' name and kind of in faith believing like this is going to make a difference, that our prayer right now, our praise right now. So capturing that night, and we captured it all on video as well. So it's a really special thing for me personally. But that comes out on Friday, the 29th of May, which might be after.
Amazing. Yes, it could be tomorrow or it could be last week, depending on when this comes out.
Great. But so it's available probably.
Yes. So you need to search for Bright City UK on all good streaming platforms. So, and I know that Bright City, it's not just a musical expression, is it? You've got all sorts of different creative expressions within your team, which is amazing. But do you want to just talk to me a little bit? Obviously, we're in the middle of this COVID-19 lockdown. We may see some light at the end of the tunnel, but no one really knows. Can you just give me a bit of like, what is your personal revelation in this time? I can't imagine that we're going to be going back to normal. I feel like everyone is saying the same thing. It's like we're not going to be going back to what it was. We're going to be moving into a new normal. So I guess it's up to us to have a vision for and a hope for what that is. But what would be your vision? What's God talking to you about the next season?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely, obviously, want to say I don't feel like I have all the answers. This is just a very personal thing for me. But I think, personally, I was pretty rocked when we first went into lockdown. I think one of the reasons was because I could say it like this, that like 10 years of kind of, certainly in terms of work and like what I'm plowing into day by day, it was very, the team, the Bright City team, the services, the people gathering together, and the songs, the kind of just all the stuff that actually had to kind of come down in one go, had to like stop overnight. So at first I was like, man, I don't know what's going on. And obviously personal challenges in the midst of it all as well. But I suppose, I felt really personally an invitation from God. That's probably the best way I can put it. I felt like a spirit, kind of Holy Spirit in me. There's that old song which Jesus Culture redid a few years ago now, but the Come Away With Me. If you know that song, but just even that line, I felt that's what the Spirit of God says, sort of come away with me in this season. And obviously there's quite a lot of this time certainly when we first entered into it, where I know people were leaning into the rest of it a little bit and the Sabbath almost of it. But obviously as the season goes on, and like you said, we probably can't all remain in the Sabbath forever, so and naturally I'm a bit more, I want to just sort of come away with God and retreat. That's probably is my natural. But in the come away with me invitation, what I felt God say was it's an invitation back to sort of true worship in some way. So I suppose what I began to think is I really want to grow as a worshipper in this season and not just hold out until, like you say, we get back to normal or we can meet back together to worship. I don't want to just hold out for that, which I long for, obviously, in the pain and the struggle of all that coming down. I just wanted to take God's invitation to grow as a worshipper rather than deplete in any way or just, plateau. So I thought, well, Lord, I really want to learn more about you, more about worship, what it is to just exist, to worship you and glorify you, to make music in my heart again to you. And, with no crowd to lead or no band to rely on or no sort of, what does it mean just for my spirit to connect with you and to bless you in some way and to bring you glory with my existence,
Yes.
And so
totally.
I kind of came back to some of that again. And I suppose the hook for me was Jesus's words in John chapter 4 to the Samaritan woman. There's a story where Jesus talks to the woman at the well. He shouldn't really be talking to her. There's a rift between the Samaritans and the Jews that makes it an awkward conversation. He also probably shouldn't be speaking to a woman. Anyway, it makes it all quite controversial. And she turns the subject to worship. And his response to her is so beautiful. It's like Jesus' kind of sermon on worship. So I suppose that's why I was so hooked by it. When I was thinking about true worship, I thought, well, if Jesus is going to give a sermon on worship, this is probably where I should start. His words on worship. And what he says, I love, and is he says, a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers won't worship on this mountain where you Samaritans worship, and they won't worship in Jerusalem where the Jews worship. A time is coming and has now come when true worshippers will worship God in spirit and truth. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father's seeking. So I was like, just so hooked on Jesus' words, like, how can I grow in this spirit and truth worship? And I was struck by a couple of things. Like, one was the fact that Jesus came to bring down the temple model of worship. And what he was saying to the Samaritan woman is, you guys worship on this mountain and you get it a bit wrong because you worship idols and you worship different things and you try and worship. Anyway, and we worship in Jerusalem in this temple thing, but actually the time of that is over. And he's sort of saying, like, Jesus is saying, I'm the temple now. Like, I'm the way you worship now. It's relationship with me. I missed out a bit that he says, but he says, we worship what we do know. So he's sort of saying, like, we're in relationship with who we worship. It's like it's all about relationship with him. And the spirit and truth thing I love because, just the model thing, by the way, in the place. So by Jesus saying, we're not going to worship here or here, and we're not going to worship in this way. It's about me now. It's about, that helped me because I thought, well, wow, that's really us right now, isn't it? We don't have our old model, and we don't have our old place of worship, our sacred ground. And, it's like, how are we going to worship? How are we going to even do this? But Jesus is saying it's okay because it's about me. And spirit and truth, so helpful because it's like we've got the spirit of God, we've got the truth of who he is. And as I say, just that invitation around spirit, that like actually I was born just to be a spirit. I am a spiritual being. We don't rely on all these material things that are so helpful around worship, the brilliant songs, the band, but actually we don't rely on them for it to be trtrue worship.
Yes.
It's got to be a spiritual connection between, God is spirit and his worshippers must worship him. And it must be about that connection. So I suppose I've just dived deep into like some of these scriptures and just tried to explore, like, I just want to grow, Lord, in you and so grow in my worship. I think the thing that's blown my mind is if we just get to know God really well, we'll love him really well. our worship's automatic.
Yeah,
worship
definitely.
becomes a reflex response when it's like, when you know God. Like if you truly have a view of God, a correct kind of, and you know who, and you're invested in the relationship. Worship's not theoretical, God's out there, and it's like, oh, we're in relationship with the one we worship. So, and when you really know him, it's just, it all pours out.
Yeah.
So I suppose I've been making the goal to know God better, because then my worship definitely will grow in this season. That's a little bit of a, but
yeah, but I think what you're saying is so true, because we can actually see the fruit of that in the fact that we've all been doing worship from our own homes, and piecing it together with, so we haven't been with the people we've been even leading worship with, and yet it seems to be working, in the sense of, on a Sunday in an online church service, people are sensing the presence of God. And so the ways that we have thought it has to be done, this is proving that actually, we can't do it that way now. We don't have the lights and the screens and whatever, but we can do it this way. And oh, look, God shows up, because like you say, it's not about the stuff. And it's now we're maybe about Zoom calls and filming on iPhones and all that sort of stuff, and we're using technology in a different way. But the technology is just a thing to help us. It's not about the worship, and the worship is about our spirits coming into line with his spirit. And I think it's amazing you say that, because our team were sort of, just when lockdown happened, we were sort of halfway through a whole series in our creative team about spirit and truth. So
nice.
So that really resonates with us, and it sort of adds into the exact same direction that we were going. So I thank you for that. It's really brilliant.
Oh, well, I love that too, Matt, because it's like the word truth in John's gospel can be literally translated. I had to look it up. I didn't know this, but like unveiled reality. But so the other thing I love about in spirit and truth, where Jesus says, is it's like an unveiled thing. It's like for it to be truly spirit, it has to be sort of honest. Has to be like, this is an honest thing. This is like unveiled, no mask, no pretense, no this is just my honest cry to God. Like, I love you, God. And that's the type of worship that God's seeking. So I think that's so encouraging. You've been digging into that anyway, but it's not only a spiritual thing, but it's also just means it's like, it has to be an honest. There's just no stuff around it. And you guys are awesome.
No, it's great. Thank you so much, Paul. And, just thanks for your friendship as well, just over the years, and sort of general encouragement. But it's just so great to see what you guys have built, and an inspiration to us all. I think you are a brilliant team player, and the way that you encourage the team, and you are always preferring others above yourself. And it wouldn't surprise me if one day we don't see you as a vicar yourself. Just throw that out there, because I do just think you definitely have that natural team leadership ability, or it's just a natural gift on your life. I don't know if you even notice it, but you definitely have that thing of just wanting to encourage the guys around you and lift them up and help them in any way you can. And it's just a brilliant, we love the story of St. Peter's. We love the music of Bright City, and we're excited about the next 10 years. So keep going, mate. And
thanks, Matt.
And
thanks for having me today.
Thanks for coming on today. So bless you, mate.
Love you, Matt. And, thank you.
If any of you guys watching want to find out more in this series, then you can go to audaciousworship.com. We've got a YouTube channel, which is Audacious Worship, where you can find the other interviews, and you can find music and stuff like that. And obviously, Paul's guys, Bright City, you need to find out about them. Bright City UK on Instagram, YouTube, they're everywhere, and they're brilliant. And you can go and listen to the new album, I'm sure. We'll see you next time.